what's going on in the United States and the health secretary aside, I still think we're making a lot of progress. We could be making more. But on vaccinations and where we are in the technology, RNA technology, et cetera, as we enter 2026 here, I'd like to know from your perspective where we are on the basics and in developing vaccines and developing treatments for a variety of diseases. So I'm going to sit back and let you pick where we're going to start.
Well, first off, it's hard to disentangle that question from the shenanigans south of the border, because a lot of what RFK has been doing is trying to devalue vaccine research in the United States, which is the heavy hitter in this field. They do a lot of the funding, if not most of the funding, and a lot of the research, if not most of the research. But we'll come back to his effects in a bit. Right now, technology-wise, of course, mRNA is progressing in leaps and bounds. There's promising work being done on creating an mRNA flu vaccine, which is really quite relevant for right now, because right now in the Northern Hemisphere, the flu is tearing a swath of carnage throughout many nations with a very high infection and hospitalization and fatality rate, in large part because, well, in part, not large part, because a slight mismatch in the prevailing vaccine and the circulating strains, that could be mostly avoided with mRNA vaccines. So this matching scenario we currently have for the flu vaccine might be a thing of the past in a couple of years, especially if we can create a universal flu vaccine, which is possibly in the cards using mRNA technology. So the flu aside, we also have vaccine technology, again, on the mRNA platform, being used both preventatively and therapeutically. And that's confusing for a lot of people. Vaccines can do both. We can use them to attempt to prevent symptoms and serious disease, as we do with the flu and COVID and measles and things like that. It can also be used as a treatment. So there is a lot of promising work being done on vaccines for dementia, believe it or not, and a way to use your immune system to clear out the plaque that some people think is associated with dementia. Vaccines against cancers. We have a few vaccines against cancers already. We have a vaccine against lung cancer, a vaccine against cervical cancer, and penile cancer, and oral cancer. Imagine a wider spectrum, robust vaccine against a host of different cancers. That's coming down the pipeline if people can just get out of the mRNA way. And it's hard to talk about this stuff without going back to the vaccine hesitation movement, the demonization of this transformative, world-changing technology. And as we are discussing these advances in vaccine technology, we are at the same time seeing the world step back from vaccination because of this anti-vaccination neuroses and insanity that seems to have gripped much of the Western world.
Now, we see it in here from the United States, but it has, like many viruses will, it has spread as well. And that's the problem here. It's rooted in the United States, but it is spread throughout several Western democracies.
100%. You see it a lot in the UK and a lot in Canada, frankly. Like the flu vaccine uptake last year was 43%, which was down from the previous year. And this year, it looks like it's like 33% or something. Last year was 33%. And this year, it's even less than that. And the year before last year, it was slightly higher. So we're seeing a trajectory towards lesser and lesser flu vaccine uptake. The COVID booster, who got the COVID booster this year? A tiny fraction of people, which is nuts because the booster this year is comparatively well matched to the circulating strain, so has a very high chance of preventing symptoms altogether. So there is definitely an anti-vaccination sentiment. The survey data shows it quite clearly that the people who A, believe vaccines work, and B, believe vaccines should be strongly urged, if not mandatory, has come down significantly in Canada across the board. Then there are people who don't believe that the childhood vaccinations should be compelled. And that's quite worrying. And that's why we're seeing the resurgence of things like measles. And we can't have this conversation without talking about the fact that Canada has lost its measles elimination status. There's a lot of noise, narrative noise, about why that might be. And by noise, I mean falsely blaming things like immigration. That is not the cause. The countries from which most immigrants are coming from have higher vaccination rates than we do. Canada, the MMR vaccination rate in Canada has dropped dramatically. It's in the 80% now. And that might sound like a high number. It is not. You need something north of 90% to ensure elimination. So this is worrying. And now news south of the border about the non-recommendation of hepatitis B vaccine at birth. That's troubling for that country. In Canada, many provinces don't have that recommendation either because we have universal health care. And so the risk of hep B infection for infants is quite low. A lot of moving parts here.
And Raywat, I look at this and go, we have avoided the serious conversations post-pandemic about this. At a political level, there has been the lip service to this, but there hasn't been a stand for fear of further backlash by a minority of people that are providing I will argue, a tyranny to the majority of people here. And that's the problem in democracies when we don't want to get a little bit of dirty or get into a little bit of a fight here. It's people like you and other people within the medical community and in the academic community that are taking their gloves off and having to fight this. But there are not enough people in elected office that are willing to take this on.
I go a step further. There aren't enough people in elected office to have our backs, and there's more than enough people in elected office willing to benefit from the insanity. I think one of the problems in this country and in the U.S. is that there is corners of some political ideologies that stoke this sentiment for personal gain, even when it's clear as individuals they don't actually believe in the anti-science rhetoric. So the disingenuousness, that's a word, disingenuousness, is angering. If we're going to get out of this, this takes a society-level effort to re-educate people on the basics of science and critical thinking, to understand that there's risk and benefit, and the risks posed by vaccines, while real, are minuscule compared to the benefits and compared to the risks posed by the diseases that they prevent and treat. So yeah, I mean, I sound frustrated because I am frustrated. I deal with this every day. And I think our original plan for this conversation was to talk about the vaccine technologies and things on my radar. But the biggest thing on my radar is the misinformation pandemic that we are dealing with. And it's just getting worse. And it affects all aspects of public discourse. Public health is the vanguard of that problem. So what we see happening in health eventually trickles down into other public policy discussions. So we have to get a handle on misinformation if we're going to get this right. To me, it's a kind of asymmetric warfare, frankly, where disinformation merchants can do what they want, and the rest of us have to reply slowly and ineffectually. And I think we got to fix this. And, we all have some ideas. The conversations are being had about how to address this. It's difficult to do so while there is a propaganda broker south of the border who is making this his life's mission.
Well, let me know how people like me can be allies in this process, because I think we have to step outside of our box as well and start promoting what's right in science. And it struck me what you said here is that there is on so many fronts now a rejection of science now. And in history we go through these types of movements from time to time. We've certainly seen it in the last 100 years as well. But in the end, I'm confident that science will win, but it can't win standing still. It takes leaders to lead, and it takes people to get out of the shadows on this and to say something and do something about it. So I'm glad what you're doing on this front, but there needs to be others that come forward in so many communities that'll stand up for this as well, because science will suffer, our health will suffer, but also progress will suffer as a result.
Well said. Our wealth will suffer as well. All these things are interrelated. And frankly, this is a geopolitical shift. What we're living through right now is a time of change, which is why it's so stressful. And there's a shift in wealth and power and mindset around the world. And I don't know what the future holds, frankly, and I'm a little concerned. But we got to try. We got to try to set things right.
Raywat, I appreciate this. I know we were going to talk about something else, but this is more important right now. So thank you again for doing what you're doing, and the best to you and your family in 2026.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.